On April 2nd, the fabulous oboe and English horn player Cally Banham released her second solo album called Tango to the Core. This album features, as the name suggests, various tango offerings arranged for her group called Cortango. The CD consists of not just music written by the great tango composers such as Astor Piazzolla and Carlos Gardel, but also music of Roberto Firpo, Augustine Bardi, and Mario Melfi. There are also some fabulous mashups. For example, the pairing of the music of Scott Joplin with music of Carlos Gardel and music of Chopin with Fior, Fioravante de Sico. Cally Banham is currently the English horn player with the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra, an orchestra she has performed as soloist with on many occasions. Before joining the St. Louis Symphony, Banham was solo English horn with the Buffalo Philharmonic, principal oboe with the Memphis Symphony Orchestra, and fellow with the New World Symphony. For our Classic 107 listeners, the name Cally Banham might be familiar because I regularly program her Christmas CD, Core Christmas, around the holidays. And joining me here over Zoom to talk about her fabulous new CD, Tango to the Core, I am joined by Cally Banham. Hey, Cally, nice to meet you here over
Hello.
Zoom.
Hi, Chris. Nice to be with you.
Mm. So when I was preparing for the interview, I discovered that aside from oboe and English horn being your passions, you are very passionate about tango. You dance to it for fun, and you've created this group, Cortango. And now you have a show in St. Louis on a radio station called Tango with Cally. Can you talk about your first experiences with tango and why you find the form so fascinating?
Sure. I first came to tango as a dancer. I was learning the social dancing aspect of it, taking classes in St. Louis, taking private lessons, things like that, traveling around to festivals. And I even traveled to Buenos Aires a couple of summers to study dancing tango there.
Oh, wow.
And I loved it passionately, and I reached a certain level as a social dancer, but plateaued, and I was not really going to be able to go much further. But during the time that I was studying the dancing, I would be in class and I was just mesmerized by this incredible music, which reminded me so much, the feeling I got reminded me so much of when I first discovered like Brahms symphonies, Sibelius tone poems. I was like, this mighty music. I
Mhm.
was really captivated by it. And I thought, oh, I love it so much. I wish I could play it. And I said that at the end of a class one time. Oh, I just love this music so much. I wish I could play it. One of my classmates said, well, why can't you? Aren't you a professional musician? I thought, well, I can. I can. Of course I can. I just have to kind of make it my own with arrangements that are suited for my instrument, the English horn. And
Mhm.
so I began Cortango. That was in 2013. And we commissioned arrangements together and expanded our repertoire to include Christmas music, big robust concert tangos, things like that. It's been an amazing ride with them. And now you mentioned my radio show, Tango with Cally. That part of tango for me is like being a scholar and trying to show the classical music audience what I felt, as a classical music lover when I discovered the great music of tango. So I've come to this place where I'm a tango musician and scholar now, not so much a dancer anymore.
So is it you that brings the tangos to the group? I mean, there's some names on the CD that are off the beaten path. Is it you or is it sort of a collaborative thing with Cortango?
There are sometimes suggestions from my violinist, Asako Kuboki, but mostly it's my vision of what I want to play. Certain things that have really spoken to me personally, different tangos that I just loved for different reasons. And I usually instruct sometimes I arrange, but when I arrange, it's more of a transcription style, like on the album, the Stravinsky and the Golubev.
Mm.
But when it's a big tango being reimagined for my group, I commission the arrangements from different arrangers who are members of Cortango, Adam DeSorgo and Adam Manis, and I usually instruct them about my vision for it, like the track that combines the Scott Joplin rag with the Gardel Por una cabeza.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Adam Manis, he's a pianist in Cortango, right?
Yes, so there's two Adams, So our original member, Adam DeSorgo, is a pianist, and uh, our pianist that is more regularly with us is Adam Manis, who is a jazz musician around St. Louis, has lots of projects going on, and is very busy as an arranger for his own groups and for the St. Louis Symphony, and manages to find a little time to arrange for Cortango.
And there's some great string players in the group as well. Do you want to talk about who the string players are?
Yeah, those are my colleagues from the St. Louis Symphony. And I mentioned already the great violinist Asako Kuboki. And also in my group is violist Chris Tantillo, cellist Melissa Brooks, and bass player David Duriso. And we've
Mm,
been together for doing this for a long time, and we have a great relationship with the group. Everyone is really secure, and so it's easy to work with this group because you can tell them something and they react the right way. And more importantly, they can tell me, their leader, something if I need to know something. And I always listen to them. They're the best critics of the group. I listen to what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and I try to adapt. So it's
mhm.
so it's a collective,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Uh, you might think with a CD called Tango to the Core, would be like super visceral, in your face tangos, and there is some of that. There's the Libertango, and I'm thinking in particular, actually, the Viviani track on the disc, which is great. I'd never heard it
Oh, thank
before.
you.
Amazing. But there's also sort of more intimate arrangements. That I'm thinking here of the Albani Tango and
Mhm.
help me out with the pronunciation here, Bardi Nunca Tuvo Novio. Am I
Novi,
saying?
nunca tuvo novio.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
good.
Which is for just oboe and English horn. When you were putting the order of tracks together on the CD, did you have a specific idea in mind as how you wanted the CD to flow together?
I definitely did. I wanted something I had hoped that the audience for the CD would experience it kind of in an old-fashioned way, listening to the album from beginning to end as a journey, kind of the way that we used to do with vinyl when we were kids, right? And I structured the CD so that there would be these robust tangos, like you mentioned, like the Viviani or the Liber Tango, and then to borrow, from the culinary world, a term, I wanted to sort of have a amuse bouches thrown in there, something to cleanse the ears palate,
Yeah, yeah,
something more. Those intimate tracks that you mentioned are spaced on purpose to kind of separate the larger offerings.
yeah.
And that way you kind of go on this journey that has like hills and valleys and different kinds of sonorities. I wanted the English horn is a very beautiful, soulful instrument. I wanted it to be presented in with variation so that you can hear as the album goes on all of the colors and all of the styles that I can get, with this wonderful instrument, which is like a human voice.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Um, there is the tango from Stravinsky's Assaggio Soldat on the disc. It is fantastic. And I say that as a clarinet player who's actually played the trio. Can
Nice.
you can you talk about how you recorded that? I'm presuming there was some overdubbing that was done there.
Oh yes, yes. I mean, it's funny. I had a colleague in the St. Louis Symphony ask me recently, "Well, who played the second English horn part on the Stravinsky?" And I laughed. No, 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 it's me. I recorded Will James, the principal percussionist with the St. Louis Symphony, played the percussion part with me, and we began recording this by the two of us being in the same room. Will playing the part the way that he would play it normally with a clarinet player and a violinist, in the way that Stravinsky wrote it. And I executed the main material of the violin part on the English horn. And that was the first session. And then after that, it was just me overlaying the double stops. In one case, there's three notes, with the violin. I recorded them in time. We did, we used tools to move them and get everything to sound
Yeah.
exactly right. And then I recorded the clarinet part on the bass oboe. So that I kind of transcribed that. And that was pretty tricky, I have to say. So we spent a huge amount of time sort of constructing this piece. That track on the album is not something that I would be able to offer to anyone live. It is exclusively a recording.
Mm. One of the things I'm just thinking about is I seem to remember when I was prepping for the interview seeing a picture of Cortango performing for dancers.
Oh, yes.
I'm presuming you've done that. And does the performance change when you're playing for dancers as opposed to recording?
Yes, great. That's a great question. The whole thing began because I wanted to offer some live music for dancers who, were my community when I first began to learn to do the social dancing. So that's how it started. And early on, we played events exclusively for dancers, and we were playing simple music that can be danced to, very rhythmically steady things that would be enjoyable for
Mm,
dancers. Still challenging, but not ridiculous, So it was the St. Louis Symphony took an interest in presenting Cortango in concert early on. And that's when we began to expand our repertoire to be, uh, more for listening audiences as well. So now it leans much more toward playing for listeners. The last live event that Cortango did was actually in a men's prison outside of St. Louis, and that was something that we did through the community partnerships program through the St. Louis Symphony. So we've played all over the place. We've played at the Arch. We've played in all most of the smaller and larger venues in St. Louis over the years. A lot of things. Sometimes big concerts, and every once in a while still for the dancers. And I do love to play for the dancers. And we changed the order to answer your question about how does it change. I'll look at what's going on and kind of think, well, maybe we want to have a waltz now, and I'll change the order of things or the tempos of things to suit the dancers more. The recording is something that's different entirely, even from concert performances. It's more meticulous.
mm. I have a friend of mine who's a very fine bandoneon player, and he says that when he plays for tango dancers, he very much watches their movement and will try to stretch things out to sort of
Yes,
match up. Yeah, yeah.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. One of the other gems that happens right at the end of the disc is the Gully of Tenebrae. It is a stunner. What is it that you love about Gullyov's music, and why did you want to arrange this piece for Cortango?
Well, this is the only offering on the album which is not a tango, although Goliath is Argentine and of course was influenced in some of his orchestral works and other types of works by tango. But this one, I discovered this piece in doing research for my radio show Tango with Cally when I was doing a special episode about Osvaldo Goliath. I found this piece and it just knocked me out. It
Mm,
was one of these things I found myself just listening to it over and over and over and feeling captivated the way I described about like the beginning of tango or the way I felt about Brahms symphonies, when I was 17 years old and still do, by the way. But I thought it was one of these things I know myself well enough now that when I obsess about a piece like that, it means that I need to play it and arrange it or adapt it, to make it possible for me to do that. And so I discovered that there were two versions, one for string quartet and the other, the original for string quartet with soprano and clarinet. I sort of took elements of both and I transcribed just the first movement so that we could play this. And when we first performed it live with my group, some of my string player colleagues had doubts. I put it on a holiday program and they said, are you sure about this? And I said, I'm going to frame it a certain way, when I present it to the audience. And I presented it to the audience at that holiday concert that it was something to reflect on. The piece is about the innocence of a child, in a crazy world filled with warfare. And I just found a way to kind of tie it in with the tangos, the relationship being Osvaldo Goliath and his experience with tango and being from Argentina.
mhm.
So I closed the album with it because it's the most classical of all the tracks, and it's also the most reflective. And so I kind of wanted to end that journey with like, okay, this beautiful thing that we can kind of now come to rest.
And it totally works. It's just a stunner of a piece, as I was saying earlier. Tango to the Core is just great. I'm going to wrap up the conversation by asking, what do you hope people will take away from the recording, and where can people get it?
I just hope that people who love classical music will be interested in tango music enough to seek out more of it beyond mine, to maybe look into the traditional music, from the 40s and 50s, the wonderful old recordings, which I think most classical music lovers could relate to and appreciate. I also hope that people will know a little more about my instrument, about the English horn, or the cor anglais as it's known, and listen for it, in the orchestra when they go to hear their town's orchestra, and to be more aware of my instrument, which is a wonderful solo voice in the orchestra. Um, the Tango to the Core is streaming on pretty much all the platforms, so you can listen to it that way, or you can download the digital tracks on iTunes. I did, being kind of a sentimental, I did get the CDs made up, the physical CDs, and if anyone would like one of those, they can go to my website, callybanham.com, and they are for sale there.
Perfect. And for our Classic 107 listeners, I've provided a direct link to Cally's website that you can find at Classic 107. Cally, this has just been so great to talk to you and talk about your CD, Tango to the Core. All the best. And thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. This has just been so much fun.
Pleasure. Thanks so much, Chris.